Alexander Vladimirovich Bychkov is a Russian serial killer. Between September 2009 and January 2012, he committed 9 proven murders in the town of Belinsky, Penza region. The maniac's victims were men, many of whom abused alcohol or led poor lifestyles. By his own admission, Bychkov was engaged in eating his victims. Alexander Bychkov was born in 1988. His younger brother, Sergei, was born 2 years later. Father Vladimir Bychkov worked as a combine harvester, later learned to be a master in the repair of refrigeration equipment. According to neighbors, the mother Irina Bychkova had problems with alcohol, to which over time, the father also became addicted. At the age of 40, presumably because of alcohol problems, as well as because of quarrels in the family, he laid hands on himself. However, the mother did not grieve for long. She constantly had some drinking buddies and admirers. From a young age, according to the townspeople, the mother forced her children to work hard in the vegetable garden and collect scrap metal. If the brothers returned home without money, their mother beat them. In addition, the boys were involved in petty thefts from household plots. They were repeatedly caught stealing, but as a rule, they were pitied and released. Alexander is a classic representative of the so-called Herostratus syndrome. He killed because of his desire for self-fulfillment. He wanted to stand out, to prove to everyone, and first of all to himself, that he was capable of very, very much. But in a small town in the Penza region, it was almost impossible to realize himself. But in a small town in the Penza region, it was almost impossible to materialize. However, even if it had been possible, there was another problem. Bychkov was too ordinary, had no abilities, and even if he had, he didn't know it himself, because there was no one to develop these abilities in him. His mother drank and was more interested in her male drinking companions, and the 3 children grew up on their own. If in early childhood Sasha could be called quiet and calm, then in adolescence he woke up aggression. The guy can be understood. He was tired of constantly receiving from his mother, and he began to answer her in the same way. Soon Irina became afraid of her older son and sent him away to his grandmother's house, located nearby. Neighbors said that in the heat of quarrels and brother Sergei, on him Alexander also raised his hand. In 2007, Alexander graduated from vocational school as a mechanic for repair of agricultural machinery and entered Belinsky Pedagogical College, but soon was forced to take a leave of absence. He needed time to take care of his brother who, as a result of an attack by unidentified persons, received numerous severe injuries, including a head injury, and became a second-group invalid. From a young age had the nicknames Dried Rambo and Poacher because of his tattoo on his forearm that read Poacher. In middle school, he tried raw ice cream meat, after which he became known as the Predator. He also consumed raw fish. Bychkov committed his first serious crime on September 17, 2009. He killed 60-year-old Evgeny Zhitko. The man came to Belinsky, to the district archive, for documents for registration of pension. The murderer met the victim in a local liquor store, invited the elderly man home for the night, and at night, when he fell asleep, took his life. The rest of his male victims, who were vagrants and alcoholics, were killed by Bychkov, who coined the nickname Rambo. According to a similar scenario, he invited them to a deserted place, gave them vodka, and killed them with a knife or hammer. He buried the remains of the bodies behind his own house or threw them into a landfill on Lermontovskaya Street. To divert suspicion from himself, the criminal committed the murders from May to September, when numerous workers and construction workers from CIS countries came to the city, as a result of which the law enforcement authorities first worked out the versions of involvement of the newcomers in the murders. The next victim of the maniac was his mother's roommate Vladimir Berezovsky. It happened on November 4, 2009. Vladimir got drunk and argued with his mother, Irina Bychkova. Alexander was fed up with drunken squabbles, especially since when drunk, his stepfather often allowed himself to raise his hand on Irina and her children. Therefore, Sasha decided to kill his stepfather. He volunteered to escort him home and on the way flogged him with a knife, and the blade slipped off and the perpetrator hurt his finger. The wound was characteristically between the thumb and index finger. The wound was severe and the maniac had to go to the hospital. Alexander was even summoned for questioning. But since at that time no one knew about the close relationship between Bychkov's mother and the then missing Vladimir and did not seek to find out, Alexander was simply released. He said that he got the wound accidentally, falling on a splinter during a walk in the park, and they believed him, did not check. did not even take the suspicious young man on a pencil. Vladimir Berezovsky's remains were found only a few months later. The next missing persons in May 2010 were two men, Lev Andreev and Alexei Kutuzov, 47 and 37 years old. Then 54-year-old Evgeny Marsharov disappeared. The bodies of the men were found again several months later, and in fact in the center of the city, in the backyards behind a fairly frequented place, the city bathhouse. Upon finding the remains, the operatives noted that the body parts of the two men, Kutuzov and Andreev, were scattered in a radius of as much as 100 square meters, that is, the perpetrator deliberately walked and scattered them over a fairly large area. This led law enforcement officials to believe that the killer was a person with a confirmed diagnosis, a local resident, Alexander Juplov, a mentally ill disabled man of the second group, nicknamed Juplik, whose detention caused a considerable amount of criticism of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, but who was later amnestied due to newly discovered circumstances of the criminal case, was convicted and sent for compulsory treatment under Article 111, Part 4 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation, for causing serious harm to health, resulting in the death of a person. A criminal case was initiated against Belinsky IAB investigator, who put an innocent man on trial, but was soon closed for lack of corpus delicti. Bychkov went into hiding for 8 months, but then he started killing again. The first victim after a long break was Vladimir Tarusov, a man who led an antisocial lifestyle, previously convicted. Nobody paid attention to his disappearance, but when 37-year-old Sergei Lesyanin and 34-year-old Sergei Sukharev disappeared, the residents of the district realized that the maniac had returned. The missing villager worked as a janitor and drank. His marriage broke up, he lived with his mother, but the man had never been seen in drunken parties, let alone in fights. He drank at home and went to bed calmly afterwards. He did not show any aggression while intoxicated. That day on June 11, 2011, Sergei went out to buy cigarettes and did not return. He simply disappeared. Not even his body was found. And on July 19th, Sergei Sukharev disappeared without a trace. Caught Alexander Bychkov completely by accident. After 2 murders, he suddenly felt an acute shortage of knives, because it was necessary to kill with something. The guy got tired of doing it with improvised objects, wanted more professional tools. On the night of January 21st, 2012, Alexander Bychkov broke into the store, everything for home, and stole 3 garden knives and money totaling about 10,000 rubles. The thief's interest in large knives attracted the attention of law enforcement. It also became clear from the picture of the crime that the person who broke into the store was not a big man, of small stature and thin build. They began to check young residents of Belinsky, who were in the habit of carrying knives. Soon, the attention of the guards of the law was drawn to the figure of 23-year-old Alexander Bychkov. At that time, the guy weighed only 56 kilograms and was quite thin. Alexander decided to detain, and he confessed to the theft. Stolen knives were found in his house, and also during the search of the suspect was found his personal diary, in which 11 murders were described. A large number of movies containing violent scenes were also found. During interrogations, Bychkov admitted that he sometimes consumed his victims. In his diary, Bychkov called himself a lone wolf and explained the murders by the desire to assert himself. Another motive, according to the investigation, was hatred for men who looked like drinking companions of the criminal's mother. Vagrants and alcoholics. A comprehensive forensic psychiatric examination revealed the presence of a mixed personality disorder in the criminal, however, not depriving him of the ability to give an account of his actions. On the basis of the expertise, the murderer was recognized as sane. At the investigative experiments, the maniac enjoyed demonstrating his attack technique, with a smug smile descending from his face. There were other cases of missing men of different ages in Belinsky, but the criminal himself claimed that he had only 9 men on his account. At the same time, Alexander had his own philosophy. He claimed that he consciously took the lives of only men, as they can stand up for themselves. He did not kill women and children as a matter of principle, and did not even plan to do so, as his hand would not rise. Bychkov was very proud of this principle, but one should take into account several important circumstances. First, in spite of his puny appearance, the Belinsky maniac possessed impressive strength, as he had been training since childhood, having to carry heavy weights in the vegetable garden. Secondly, he still killed men, albeit strong, but in a state of alcoholic intoxication, and sometimes quite strong, and the maniac himself always took care of bringing the victims to the appropriate condition. He always got the men drunk before he killed them, maybe because he realized he couldn't cope with a sober one. But Alexander, judging by rare interviews, is still proud of himself. On December 28, 2012, the prosecutor of Penza region approved the indictment against Bychkov. The defendant refused a jury trial. The court considered 9 episodes proved. Alexander Bychkov was found guilty. The fact of cannibalism could not be proved. On March 22, 2013, Penza Regional Court sentenced him to life imprisonment in a special regime colony. The convict and his defense counsel disagreed with the verdict and filed a complaint to a higher instance, the Judicial Board for Criminal Cases of the Supreme Court of the Russian Federation. Having considered the appeal, left the verdict unchanged and the complaints without satisfaction. Bychkov is serving his sentence in the colony on the island of Ogunjani in the Lahodsky region. Already in prison, Alexander met a US citizen by correspondence. A girl named Christina Varr saw Bychkov in some documentary program and fell in love. The romance began in letters. Then Christina repeatedly came to the colony, also contacted the mother of her lover, Irina Bychkova, who helped financially. In the end, the lovers got married and had a son.